developing and developed world is much more in conflict on a host of issues, from climate change and financial architecture to trade and growth. It's dramatically different because the United States is less capable and less willing to provide public goods on issues from proliferation and collective security to global economic lifting. And it's changed because there's increasingly a fight in economic models between a more or less regulated free market economy that we see in the developed world and a state capitalist system where the state is principal, arbiter, and actor in the economy, which we see in many countries, including, in particular, China.
We see three things as absolutely critical. And the first is, Ian referred to this year being a traumatic or iconic year. I tend to disagree with that. I tend to agree more with what you heard from Jim Wolfenson yesterday, and that is that we are going through a long-term, 200-year maybe, economic swing. The world has not been on the side of China and India for the last 200 years. In fact, if you go back to the early 19th century, as Jim said, China and India accounted for about 40% of worldwide GNP. The BRICS and Next 11, as Jim O'Neill at Goldman defines it, would have been about 50%. With that swing is in reverse, and we are going back to the future. This is all back to the future stuff. And the dominance of Asia, of Latin America, of Africa and the Middle East, of Central and Eastern Europe will become even more so. And this recession that we've gone through, which I think, to pick up on Leah's point, is much more severe. You're going to hear, as I said, from Jeff Immelt. He talks to the world about the world being reset. I do believe it's been reset. But the biggest emblematic item is this shift in economic power from the West, not only to the East, to the South. I was in Brazil over Christmas and the New Year. This decade will be the decade also of Latin America. Events such as the World Cup in 2014, the Olympic Games in 2016 are iconic events, not only for Brazil, but for Latin America.
I think it's going to come from individuals who actually respect the power of different points of view and recognize that by getting different points of view at the table, you'll actually get better solutions. That may be companies that recognize that having men and women from different ethnic backgrounds, different nationalities, different religious backgrounds will actually result in better results. It also will come from recognizing that, you talk about the political environment in the United States, that we need to get Republicans and Democrats together at the table. The same way we need to get people together around the world, public-private partnerships. That's where the leadership's going to come from.
I clearly think that recovery has to come from the corporate sector, because the governments will not solve the problem at the end. And I see a big issue of the burden of over-regulation and rising protectionism of single states. And then we will see governance gaps, global governance gaps between the single countries, what we have to deal about. And that forces us much more, as you said, to have regional strategies.
Business has to speak out in a much more effective way than they did before. It's interesting that Cameron, in his campaign to date, has not really embraced or tried to embrace business in the same way that the Obama administration hasn't. There is no member that I'm aware of in the cabinet or in senior levels in the administration, the Obama administration, representing business. Not even the Commerce Secretary represents business, which in previous administrations has been the case. That's one thing. The second thing is that business leadership, I think, has to clearly differentiate its strategies in different parts of the world. In Western Europe, whether we like it or not, it is basically cost containment over the coming years that is going to be critically important. Less so, I think, in America because of its scale and its size. In the BRICS and the Next 11, in Asia, in Latin America, in Africa, and the Middle East, and Central and Eastern Europe, growth is going to be higher on the agenda, and that is why those regions are going to become even more critically important. If you run a company, a global company, you're looking for like, what the retailers call same-store growth on the top line. You won't get it in Western Europe. You will get it in the BRICS and Next 11.